Howdy folks, this is Colin here from CADfoundations.com and welcome to the first part in a new video series getting oriented to the basics of AutoCAD. So if you're a brand new user or maybe even somebody that's coming back to the platform after a whole lot of years away, and believe me, I can empathize because I feel like I myself was in that position not all that long ago. But yeah, at any rate, let's get ourselves oriented here in AutoCAD. So this is the window you will be seeing immediately when you open up the software. If it's your first time, you may have to accept a few disclosure agreements and what have you. And you likely won't have anything here on your landing page. I have a few things here. Things that I had worked on, but I just jumped onto a new computer with my same account, so I don't even think, none of these are actually linked. Otherwise, it'll typically have like a little preview of your drawing in there. But what you want to do from here is you want to go ahead and click on new, and that'll open a new document. If it's the first time you're ever opening a document, like I'll open another new one here, it will show you a list of templates. This one right here that it defaults to, the AutoCAD, that gives you the general basic layout, kind of the de facto default. There are use cases for some of these other ones. For example, architecture or manufacturing, it'll give you like a little default title block if you don't feel like creating one yourself. But AutoCAD is just fine for our purposes of learning here. I'm not going to open a new one since I already have a window open here. By default, it will have the grids on in the background. You can turn them off if you'd like. I learned AutoCAD with them on. I think they were on by default, and I don't think I knew how to turn them off. So I'm going to roll with them on. You do you if that's not for you. One thing that is worth noting with the grid is I see this with a lot of students that take my classes. It's just when they're starting out, they will sort of think that each grid line is one unit. So instead of actually typing stuff in, they'll just kind of try to go two over in terms of these little grid lines. But these aren't necessarily they don't really represent anything in terms of units because they're reflexive. As you can see, when you zoom out, they reset themselves. You zoom in, they reset themselves. So if you're zoomed way, way in, these may represent a tenth of a unit. If you're zoomed way, way, way out, they may represent 100 or 1,000 units, depending on how far you're zoomed out. But yeah, that's just one thing to know and one thing to be on the lookout for. But they are straight, generally speaking. And they do give you an idea, but there's other ways to ensure you can draw straight lines, which we'll get into in the future. But for now, let's just start with the basics. So up top by default, you have your standard toolbar. A lot of times if you don't see it there, you can just click this little white box with an arrow in it. And it'll bring it up for you. Or if you prefer a more abbreviated window, you can go ahead and click that. And then just like in most apps, you'll have your tabs up here to navigate to different sections. But we're going to focus on, generally speaking, the home tab today. So the things we're going to look at today are up here in the top left, lines, polylines, which are actually very important. It's kind of like industry standard when you get into architecture or quite a few things actually, but we're not going to worry about those too much right now. We're going to worry about the line, the circle, and the arc for today. And we'll see what we can do with those tools. So our first tool up here is the line, and not just with the line, but with any tool, you can either click on it up here and draw yourself some lines, or, and this works with anything, as long as you know what the tool you're using is going to be called, you can always type it into the command line, and that will also bring up lines for you. Another quick hint is the last tool you opened will be the thing that defaults when you hit the enter key. So I'm not going to type anything, and I'm just going to hit the enter key. And you'll notice down here that it brought up the line tool. So I once again have that line tool. So right now I'm just kind of drawing at random, which, you know, is fine. I'm just sort of making general lines here. But that's not really accomplishing much. So let's go ahead and grab our line tool again, which we could click up here, or we could type, oops, if I spell it right, it helps, line, and bring that up. And this time, instead of just clicking, which I'll undo that, instead of just clicking, I'm going to type in 1, 1. And that's an absolute coordinate. Think of that like back in high school using graphing paper in math class. You got your X and Y coordinates. So we're going over 1 to the right on the X coordinate and up one unit on the Y. So we are at 1, 1, and I'm going to hit enter, and that'll confirm that. So I'm zoomed way out here. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's type in 2, 1. So again, I'm going over 2 on the x-axis, and I am staying at 1 on the y-axis, which will give me a straight line here. And there I have my straight line, and this is what I was alluding to earlier. See, this actually does span across 2 lines. So again, these boxes are not 1 to 1. Let's go ahead and go up to 2, 2, enter. All right. And that makes a line straight up at a 90-degree angle, which is, you know, what we could expect if we were mapping this out. And then lastly, let's go 1, 2, which should bring us directly over. And so there's 2 ways we can close out this line. We could type in 1, 1, which I'm not going to do, or we can hit the C key for close, and that'll close out our line and bring it back to our start point. So even if I was just drawing lines at random, I could still hit C from over here and it'll close out this line. And let's go ahead and get rid of all that stuff because that's not of much use to us. And then let's look at another way we can make lines. So what we just typed in were called absolute coordinates. And it's weird. I've seen AutoCAD defaulted to different things, just depending on who's using it. I don't know how it determines what the default is. But sometimes you default to relative coordinates and sometimes you default to absolute coordinates. And that may seem like jargon right now, but I will try to explain it. So absolute coordinates, like if you type in 5, so if you type in 1, 1, and then you type in 5, 5, that's going to go to the grid coordinate 5, 5. So it's essentially going to go over 4 on the X and up 4 on the Y. Relative coordinates, on the other hand, if you typed in 5, 5 on relative coordinates, that is relative to the point you're using. So if we started at 1, 1, that's actually going to go over 5 on the x-axis and up 5 on the y-axis. So the point you'll end up at is actually 6, 6. And if that confuses you right now, don't worry about it because we're going to show you how it looks in practice. So mine by default was set to work with absolute coordinates. So no matter what, the first thing you type in, your start point will be an absolute coordinate because it can't be relative because there's nothing for it to be relative to. So we're going to type in 1, 1, enter. And now I'm going to stay with absolute coordinates and I'm going to hit 2, 2, enter. So that brought me up to 2, 2, the absolute coordinate of 2, 2. I'm going to go ahead and undo that, which you can use the undo button up here, or just like if you're using, Word, Excel, Docs, anything like that, you can hit Control Z and that'll give you an undo as well. So now to use relative coordinates, what we're going to do to get those is we're going to type in the @ symbol. So we're going to type in @ symbol 2, 2. And you'll notice our line is a good deal longer here. That actually brought us up to 3, 3. because using a relative coordinate relative to my start point of 1, 1, it brings me over 2 and up 2. So if by chance, it typically doesn't, but if by chance you are set to absolute relative coordinates by default and you want to use an absolute coordinate, instead of typing @ symbol to get to relatives, you would type in the hashtag, pound symbol, number sign, whatever you want to call it, and then type in your coordinates. And different people prefer different things, so I'm not going to tell you one way is better than the other. I like absolute just because it gives me good. Well, there's no right way. I'm not going to explain why I like things. Okay, so that is our line tool, and that is, well, no, we're going to go into one more thing with our line tool. So, if again, we'll go back to like high school geometry class, and we're going to think about our angles. So on AutoCAD, when you're using AutoCAD, you have essentially a compass of 360 degrees. So a line that is going straight to the left, I'm just hitting F8 and that gives me straight lines. You can see here that that's showing me that that's an angle of 0. And then straight up is an angle of 90. Over to the left is an angle of 180, and downwards is an angle of 270. And then obviously you have, every number in between that you could also type. Just to avoid confusion, we're going to go ahead and use those 4 like basic north, south, east, west, left, right, up, down, polar coordinates on the X and Y axis to learn how to do this. So we're just going to draw our little square again. So absolute coordinates, we're going to start at 1, 1, enter. And now we're going to go 1 over on the X axis, but we're going to type that a little differently. So we're going to type in @ symbol 1, and then we're going to type in the angle symbol, which is also the greater than symbol, or, if we were teaching elementary, the alligator eating the number that comes after it. So we're going to type in angle symbol, and because we're going directly to the right, that's going to be an angle of 0. So I went 1 over on the x-axis at an angle of 0. And then similarly, I'm going to go at 1 at an angle of 90, and that'll bring me straight up. And at 1 at an angle of 180. Oops, helps if I type it correctly. 180 will bring me directly to the left, and at 1 angle of 270 will bring me straight down. So again, three different ways to make a square. We will also be learning the rectangle tool next time around, which is a much easier way to make a square in 2 steps instead of 4. But at any rate, let's move on to the next tool we're going to be discussing here, which is the circle tool. So we grab our friend the circle tool and let's just plonk a few down and see what we get here. So unlike the line tool, once I plonk the circle down, I'm no longer in a circle tool. So I'm going to either need to select it every time, or again, because it's the default action right now for AutoCAD, I can hit enter and make a bunch of circles that way. But yeah, so that was just making circles at random. Now we're going to actually make circles for a purpose. So if I type in CIR, now I am going to go ahead and type in those absolute coordinates, and we've been living on that 1 by 1 life. So let's stay with that. 1, 1. All right. And now by default, AutoCAD is going to want you to specify the radius. If you want to specify the diameter, you can type in the D. So right now we will make a circle with a radius of 1. And then let's go ahead and do that again, and we'll go 1, 1, enter. And this time we're going to hit D. We can see down here, D for diameter. Or you could actually just click this. So I'll just click it. You could type D though. And now we're going to type 1 for the diameter. And we'll see that that gives us a diameter this time of 1, which would be a radius of 0.5 or a half. So we'll grab our circle tool again, and you'll notice that still by default, it is set to radius. So you are going to have to manually type in every time. But it does default to the last radius you selected. So if I just hit the enter key, it'll give me that radius of 0.5 every time. So if you are making, like, let's say a honeycomb or something, which you wouldn't use this for that, the array tool is better. But that's, at any rate, if you want to make multiple circles that are of the same size, that is a good way to do it. And now for the arc tool, which I don't actually use the arc tool a whole lot, I'll be honest. Well, not the standard 3-point arc. We'll be going over different kinds of arcs in later videos, but today we'll just go over the standard 3-point arc. I usually just use circles and then trim them, but that's my lazy design, and when I'm teaching it, I don't teach it that way, so I won't do it that way on YouTube either. So let's go ahead and with our circle, with our arc, well, let's just put them down and see what we can kind of do with it. So you set it down once, and that gives you a 0.1 and a 0.2. So you can kind of blob out from there. But just randomly clicking like this, like maybe if you're doing something artistic, because we're locked into a middle point right now, it's kind of hard. So for me using the arc tool, I would exclusively do it using actual typed coordinates. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll type in 1, 1, and I want something that arcs, like I want a gently upward facing arc. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 2, 2, and that'll give me that center point on my arc. And then I want to kind of bring it around and bring it flat. So let's go to 3, 1, and there I have like a good, perfect semicircle, which is what I'm going for. That looks nice to me. And then similarly, if like say I wanted to flatten out that arc a little bit, I wanted like a longer, flatter arc, I would, so we'll go 1, 1, and then let's say 3, 2, and 5, 1. So now we have a longer, flatter arc. But yeah, that's essentially how to use the arc tool. And then beneath this, you'll see there are, if you click the arrow to go beneath it, you'll see there are several options on that. That is a whole video on its own, which I will at a later date do a whole video on the different sorts of arcs. But by default, the 3-point arc it's pretty good. It's a pretty reliable way to use the arc tool, but there are definitely use cases for all the rest of them. And I actually use all the rest of them more frequently than the 3-point, but you know, it's use cases. It's depending on what you are using the tool for. So now let's go ahead and get into some of the, let's say you're making errors. I've already kind of gone over this, but oops, that line was no good. So we have the undo tool up here, and that'll go ahead and undo everything. That obliterated all of my lines when I click that right in the middle. Let's say I just make like one little error. I'm just going to go ahead and hit Control Z. So that'll just take one away. So that's a good way to use that. So if you want to just restart the whole line command, use undo up top. If you just want to undo like the very last click you did, just use the Control Z like it were a Microsoft application essentially. And let's get out of those. And then say you've already laid down everything and you've just got a big mess of lines here. A tool you could use to get rid of one or several of them is the erase tool. So with that, that gives us this little box here. And whatever I click on, that will get rid of those. So I just want to get rid of those two lines. I'm going to hit enter there. Control Z to bring them back. Or another way I could do it is, let's go ahead and grab our erase tool again. So I can do a single click, grab those same two lines, and get rid of them. Similarly, you can kind of, if you click and hold, you can make these, like this little design here, and select the lines you want. Or alternatively, to be honest, I don't use the erase tool a whole lot. I usually just select a line and then hit the delete key on my keyboard. Works with multiple lines as well. So that is typically how I do it. And then let's go ahead and to close out this video, let's just go ahead and take on our first drawing together. Let's do something nice and fun. I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. Let's grab I already grabbed the circle. Right about. Let's go 1,4 with our circle. And I want a diameter, so I'm going to type in D. I want a diameter of, D, enter, sorry. And I want a diameter of 2. So I got my first little circle there. And then let's go ahead and grab our circle again, CIR, enter. And let's go over to 5,4. And this time I'm going to go ahead and use a radius of 1, which, you know, is the same size. So, yay. And now let's grab our arc tool. So we're going to start out at 0,2. And let's go over to, so that was 5. Let's go over to 6. Getting ahead of myself. Let's go down to 3,0. And let's go over to 6,2. And those keen-eyed among you might have sort of noticed where we're going here. So we're going to grab our line tool, 0,2 and 6,2. We'll escape that line. And then last thing we'll go ahead and do is one more circle. Type in 3,3. And we'll make this a diameter, a radius. Let's make it a radius of 4. And yeah, keen-eyed among you will definitely see what we got going on here. Just get this guy a little, we'll just move this guy a little bit here. Just so, I don't know, he just looked weird when he was all intersected with that. And just for funzo, let's grab a solid, let's grab some solid black, just put it in here. And that's going to be okay. And lastly, but of course, we'll go ahead and type that in. And yeah, fun little smiley face, little emoticon or emoji, I believe is what the young and trendy among you are calling it. But yeah, obviously that's not the extent of the AutoCAD tool. This was just something fun and goofy for our first drawing together. But if you come back and check us out next time, we will be looking at, I believe, the rectangle tool. We'll be getting into trim and extend. We will also be getting into, we'll also be looking at offsets And we're going to be checking out the O snaps or object snaps, which is going to make you a lot faster and a lot more powerful of a drafter. So please do come back and check us out next time. But I thank you all for watching, and cheers. Hope you have a good day.